Hi there, this is a video for anyone thinking of coming and joining us at TRC to do history next year. Now, this is a very exciting moment for us in terms of the history course because you're actually going to be faced with options. So you're going to have choices going in. Now, there is lots of history, there's an enormous amount of it. So what we're just trying to do is to give you an opportunity to pick some different bits of it. Hopefully, there'll be something here that'll catch your attention. Right, so you can either go down one of two routes. So option one is the route that we've been running for a number of years. So unit one, you look at the Tudors. You might well have got a bit of a taste for this at GCSE or earlier in school. And it's a really, really interesting bit of British history going through from Henry VII, which really who really is the last kind of medieval king, through Henry VIII and all his wives, into the mid-Tudor period with young Edward and Mary, who gets nicknamed Bloody Mary, and then on through Elizabeth. It's a really kind of key period in terms of the formation of England and the way that England is different to the rest of Europe, particularly in aspects such as religion, but also in terms of the power of the monarchy and the development of institutions like Parliament. So it's a really interesting bit. There's some great characters in there, like Mary, Queen of Scots. It's really, really interesting bit of history, but it is quite a long time ago. So it'd suit you if you like that kind of earlier period, the earlier history. The unit two that we do, which is a depth study, so it's over a much shorter period of time, but you study it in more depth. Looks at a particular favourite area of mine, which is mid-19th century America. And essentially what this is looking at is the causes, the events of, and then the consequences of the American Civil War. And this was a war fought between the northern and southern states of America over the issue of slavery largely. And after it, we get a period known as Reconstruction, which should have seen the not only the end of slavery, but the formation of equality and civil rights. Those of you who have studied civil rights movement from the 1950s and 1960s will know that this doesn't actually work successfully. It's a really, really important bit of American history. It's absolutely vital in the development of America into the country it has become. And this is said to be the war that America never gets over. And you can still see issues such as racial tension and other issues linked back to the Civil War still kind of plaguing America today. So really, really interesting bit of history, real big impact on the modern world. And also involving it in a war which saw more Americans die than in all subsequent and previous wars added together. The coursework on that, on option one, it looks at anti-Semitism in Germany, and this looks at a 100-year period and essentially asks whether the anti-Semitism, the anti-Jewish feeling amongst the German people is an anomaly in the Nazi period, where obviously we see the horrors of the Holocaust, or whether that level of anti-Semitism, that level of hatred had existed through the previous 100 years. In both options, Unit 1 and Unit 2 are worth 40% each, and the coursework is worth just 20. What we have to have is a kind of a broad coverage of time. Each option must cover at least 200 years. So you'll notice that that one does it very easily, and we've had to do it with the coursework with our option 2. So option 2, this is going to be a new unit that we're going to be bringing in, new option we're going to be bringing in. Unit 1 looks at Russia, and it starts off in the time of the Tsars, and it goes through the emancipation of the serfs, goes through the final few Tsars. So we look at Alexander II, Alexander III, and Nicholas II, and Tsarist rule of Russia with a lot of the horror of that autocracy. And then we look at it collapse, and we look at the revolutions of 1917 and the rise of the Bolsheviks. Now, that then leads on to another really kind of significant period of Russian history where we see communist Russia, Soviet Russia, under initially Lenin and then Stalin, and then on to Khrushchev. And so we've got this kind of enormous span of Russian history looking at two really kind of significant dynasties. One is the end of the Romanovs, the Tsarist dynasty, and then the other is this kind of communist state, socialist republic was created under the Bolshevik Party, and all the horror and the implications of that. So some really interesting characters, some really interesting events, and a really kind of significant part of world history. Unit 2 is really modern British history. So it starts in 1951. So in the aftermath of World War II, the welfare state has been created, the NHS has been born, and we have a period where Britain is adjusting to its new position in the world, no longer the dominant force it had been of the century before. We see economic change, we see changes in society, particularly in the 1960s, and then we see the whole kind of political landscape of Britain changed very dramatically in '79 with the election of Thatcher. We then look at those Conservative governments and then how they fall, and the birth of New Labour and Blair's governments, and then the controversies under Blair and all the way through to the Iraq War. So super modern history. So if you're interested in Britain today and how it's got there over the last half a century, then that's an ideal unit for that. Will work really well with other subjects like politics or sociology. Now, to make sure we get the 100 years, the coursework then has to go earlier, and in that we're going to look at the Tudor world, but in a much more brief way than we are in the first option. And what we're going to look at is we're going to look at rebellion. So you'll have seen a kind of a lot of political action in Russia and Britain in the modern world, and we're going to look at what those kind of movements were like if we go back into the early modern period. So again, 40% on each exam, so that's 40% Unit 1, 40% Unit 2, and then just 20% on the coursework. So decisions to make. Which, if either of those options appeal to you? Right, so what will history do for you in a more broad sense? Will it give you a better understanding of the world around you, why things are as they are? It will build your skills that you need for university, such as building arguments, assessing the value of sources, understanding the views of other people, making judgments, doing research, writing analytically. These are all things university courses love, whether they're history courses or others. And it will also prepare you for a career, and it will prepare you for a career in a whole wide range of different things. Law really likes history degrees or history A-levels. Management, lots of people who run big companies have humanities degrees in things like history. Really good for the civil service, local government, journalism, the media, whole range of careers, that probably most of which I don't know, let alone have forgotten to mention. So there's lots of reasons to do history. Hopefully those options appeal to you. Have a look at it. Right, thank you very much for watching. If you're interested in what we do, you will find some snapshots of it on this channel. So like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe, come back and have a look at more stuff that we're doing. Right, I look forward to meeting you all. Thank you very much.